Hey guys, welcome to Muse Themes. My name is Ashton. Today we're going to take a look at our Fluid Ink theme. This is a really slick looking theme and it incorporates full width video as well as some really subtle scroll effects that gives it kind of like a ghosting effect. It's also a single page scrolling site, so this theme would work best for sites that aren't necessarily as content heavy but still want to pack a powerful punch. So starting at the top of our live demo here, we have this really neat stock video of some slow moving smoke. And to navigate, you can click any of the links or you can simply start scrolling. Either way, once you do, there's a really cool effect here with the menu where the nav buttons themselves scroll up and fade out, and the menu header and background graphic remain still, but disappear as you scroll also. And then the rest of the site pretty much comes up over this video while the video remains in place, which I think is really neat. So let's click our first menu hyperlink for work. And we get taken down to our first page anchor, showing us our gallery. And while we did that, if you kept an eye on the header of the page, as we scrolled down, we got this new nav bar that came into view from the top of the site. And even as I scroll up and down throughout the whole thing, you can see some really cool scroll effects applied here, giving everything lots of motion and interactivity, but everything still remains simple and slick. In our gallery here, we have some sortable sections laid out with this nice uniform grid of photos, any of which can be clicked to bring up a lightbox where we can also navigate within. Now let's click to our About section. We get moved down to this really neat layout where we can still see our original video playing in the background, but not prominent enough to distract from our content here. Now if I scroll down manually to this next section, notice how the white area is actually coming up into view a little faster than the rest of the content. Again, more scroll effects at work here, giving us this kind of layered feel, instead of just one long, static, boring page. We've got a Twitter feed here and a layout of links that would be great to use for a blog or press releases of sorts. Now these read more links actually take you to another page on this site. It's the only page that's separate from our main homepage in this entire site layout. But when clicked, we get taken to this really cool in-depth read of our posting, including again some more scroll effects, making this page really pop. But I'll go ahead and click back. And then lastly, when we get down to our contact section, we see the background video prominent once again, overlaid with our contact area with a form, map, and social links. So I'm going to jump into Muse and explain some of the finer points here. Now again, this theme isn't very content heavy, but there are some complex settings involved to accomplishing a few of these effects. Inside our plan view, as I mentioned, we're only working with two pages here. Our home page, which houses all our main site content, and our post page, which is what the read more button links to. And you could of course duplicate this post page as many times as you want to reflect multiple postings by simply right-clicking on it and selecting duplicate page. But let's jump into the home page because this is where our main focus lies. Starting at the very top, we have our home anchor. Now if you haven't worked with anchors before, that's what the various nav buttons on the page link to bring you to the various points on the page. And you can always add more anchors by selecting your anchor tool here on the left. Now this entire area that might appear to be empty space is actually filled with our full width video widget. I can click in this space to select it, and we can see that it is set to full width, and it's stretching about 902 pixels down from the top of the page. Now with it selected, I can click the small blue icon to open the settings panel, and this is where we load in our video. We have our MP4 and our WebM, and it is important that you include both to make sure that the video plays in all browsers consistently. And probably the most important setting to note here, with the player selected, if I look at my pinning menu, we can see that it is pinned to the top center of my page, which means that no matter how far we scroll in the browser, this video will not move. And back on the live demo, you can see that the video never really moves as we scroll. It does go out of view a few times, but that's only because it's being covered by other content. So back in Muse, let's take a look at this navigation. Starting with this top layout with the light gray graphic and the vertical menu. We're working with three elements for this one. We have a placed image for the graphic, we have a text box for the header, and we have a regular menu widget for the menu. Now if I click on any of these, you can see a long stem sticking out from the top. That's showing us that there are scroll effects applied. So let's start with this gray graphic. We'll open our scroll effects panel, and we have a motion effect applied, as well as an opacity effect applied. So let's start with the motion. We can see that all the motion is set to a value of 0, which means that it's not moving at all. And back in the demo, on the top of the page, you can see exactly that. Before it disappears, when scrolling, the graphic never actually moves. Now, our opacity effect is what's allowing it to disappear. So if we open the opacity effect panel, if you've worked with these before, you know that there are 3 positions reflected by the icons here on the left, matching the icons here on the stem. And from our values, you can see we're starting with an opacity of 100, down to 75, and then all the way down to 0. So looking at our stem, the length of this stem is where all of that change is taking place. So if we switch back to our demo, we're starting at 100%. If I scroll down slowly, we stay at 100 right up until the first part of that stem hits the top of the browser. And then we start to gradually fade away, all the way until we reach 0. Now let's take a look at the menu, because that one is a little bit different. In Muse, we get a very similar opacity effect applied, but if I switch over to motion, we can see an initial and final motion of 0.1, which means that it's just barely moving at 0.1 or 10% of the normal scrolling speed, which back on the demo, if I scroll very slowly, we can see is evident. Now real quick, I want to cover our second navigation that we can see coming from the top of the page. Back in Muse, let's select this gray nav bar. We don't see a full stem, but we do still see a little keyframe sitting here, so let's open up our scroll effects. Under opacity, we can see that there's nothing applied. We're only working with a motion effect on this one. Our key position is set to 548, which is resting right here on the top of the bar. We have an initial motion of 1, which is normal speed. However, it's set to point downward. Remember on our live demo here, once we hit that key position for that new menu, the menu drops in from the top. That's what this down setting in Muse is indicating. And then we have a final motion of 0, which means that it won't move once it's in place. Just as we can see over here on the live demo. Once it's in place, it's pinned to the top. And this same effect is applied to the nav bar, the header text, and this menu itself. Now scrolling down, there's another element I do want to cover. In this social and news section, take another look at the speed that this section is scrolling at. See how it's scrolling a bit faster than the rest of the site? Well, back in Muse, if we select anything in this section, and we take a look at our scroll effects, we can see a final motion of 1.5. So once the key position is passed, which we can see it's set to be very high on the page, everything is moving 50% faster than the rest of the content, which is giving us that layered 3D feel. I'll also note too, up here in the slideshow, we're working with a tabbed panel here with a regular Muse slideshow placed inside each one. So to edit these, you can select any of the tabs here in Muse to switch between the different sections. And inside, you just need to click a couple of times until you have the slideshow itself selected. And you can then open the settings panel there with the blue icon in order to make changes to the images. Now the last thing I want to cover is this contact section here on the bottom. This one is a bit tricky because you may have noticed here in Muse, it's not visible to you. And that reason is because since this white section is set to be scrolling faster than the rest of the site, it has to be set a little bit taller on the canvas to make sure that it provides enough space. And because of the layering settings, it's covering the contact section. Now if I shrink this white space up temporarily, you can see that the contact stuff is actually sitting behind everything. So the easiest way to make changes, what I would recommend doing is visiting your layers panel. Inside we can see that the contact section is layered beneath the news section, which is necessary to maintain that current effect. But for the sake of editing, you can simply grab this contact section and drag it up on top of news. That way you have easy access to all the content and you can simply move it back down when you're finished. So that's our Fluid Ink theme. Have fun with this one, guys, and enjoy, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. See you next time.